We are gonna get this show started. All right, welcome everybody. This is a workshop regarding short-term rentals. Workshops are very laid back, informal. Anybody can talk, even anyone in the audience. Just let's not talk over one another. Okay, here we go. All right, city manager.
Okay, so we're gonna do this slightly different. There's been a lot of back and forth with the short-term rental ordinance, lots of discussion on possible directions, what we'd like to see, what we would not like to see. So what I'm gonna do today is I'm just gonna go through a series of questions to get each one of your individual responses so that we can actually start working towards putting something in place.
Are these multiple polls?
Another
Some-
essay.
Yes, kind of.
Better be ready. Carolyn, this is watching.
So one of the first things that we all are not in agreement on, that I'd like to get some feedback on today is the definition. We in the current ordinance, and does everyone have a copy of the ordinance or do we need to take a?
Yeah, they're at our stations.
Okay,
We have one?
Here, under you, there should be one. Hello, welcome.
so
I
in,
didn't get one. Thank you.
Bye. In the definitions, we've gone back and forth in what is considered, a unit. What is considered a dwelling.
Megan,
and-
sorry to interrupt. This is chapter 23
Yeah.
Yes, what
Right.
we checked 23.
Oh, is it?
and not the SDR ordinance.
I'm sorry, I haven't, I just thought it was in. You don't have a chapter.
Get right back
There
here to
it
the
goes.
staff.
Chapter
2
23.
seconds, and
I'm doing short.
Right.
Hold on.
Section 90.
So 4 copies.
Please,
I only need
Yeah,
one.
because I don't want to pull that up till later. I already have too much stuff up here. Yeah,
Oh, apparently I can't print it from my house.
That'd be, well, you could run all the way over
yeah.
I'd say it's not like
You
that.
don't
Now
have
when
a
I get
VPN?
home, I will
there. Yeah,
probably
you
have.
can- You'll
A
have,
VPN
you'll
would
have
allow you
22
to do
pages
that.
spit out. That's, oh no, this one is a little shorter.
7.
I
So
have one at
simple.
my house. We'll just go with it.
Hold on.
What, read it to us. What's it say?
In the beginning.
How many pages is it?
It's
So-
a 7.
Why you do that? Get a T.
This-
No Jeopardy music or anything?
Well, we'll let you know it came out Saturday. And Mendoza let you know it came by Saturday.
Yes,
I can close the loop. He came by Saturday, 9:30, probably got there about 10:10. But did walk through, took pictures, you're good to go. Was it great?
And what about the electrical? I know they pulled that permit.
Oh, yeah, okay,
But
so,
you're not ready for that.
no,
Did you do that?
we're putting electrical in now, so we got electrical HVAC going in right now.
It actually comes in,
I'm sorry,
actually needs to come see.
I'll go see Frank, I'll tell Frank he's gotta come see you. Okay.
Rick, did you get the RSVP for the meeting you're going to for me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Next
it came today.
Wednesday, the 24th.
Yeah.
It's on my calendar, I'll be there.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank
and
you.
it's here at 9 AM.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just scratch part no matter what.
Good, yeah, because they sent a RSVP again
Yeah,
today.
okay,
Wanted to make sure that it's sent out to you.
yep, I got it.
And then also y'all got Border Patrol's invitation.
Yeah, lunch Thursday, 11 o'clock.
That was this Thursday.
Is coming
This
Thursday.
Thursday,
I
yeah.
meant, we've already got a meeting. Well, thank
Yeah,
you.
it's fine. 11 o'clock,
Thank you.
That's okay.
sorry,
Good
I
deal.
use my laptop at home for all my personal stuff and so my training settings are all different.
Oh. Okay.
Okay, so. Some of the conversations we've had is making sure that we clearly outline and define what we're referencing throughout the ordinance. What we consider a living space. I know that also goes back to some of our issues with parking. But the first thing I wanted to go through, and I have on my, my list of of items to discuss is the definitions. We have an administrator, advertise, bedroom, booking service, hosting platform, occupant, owner, premises, and STR means a residential premise or thereof. The one thing that we don't clearly outline that I'd like just some cohesiveness to be able to start working towards is, do we want to define dwelling, unit, living space? Do we want them to all be consistent within each other? Do we want every room to be a unit, a sleeping unit? There's so many different ways to look at this. And I think when we look at the very start of it is we need to outline what we're talking about. A bedroom means the living area of a dwelling unit.
But then we don't define
So
dwelling
what's a
unit.
dwelling? What's a unit? So is everyone in agreement that we need to add additional definitions to outline exactly what we're asking throughout the ordinance?
I think having definitions clarifies. I'm not sure that we want all those definitions. Do we need
Those are
unit?
all the current ones in here.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
so I'm looking at, because we talk about living space,
mhm,
we talk about a dwelling, we
uh-huh.
talk about a unit. If we're going to interchange them, then we need to have them all defined the same.
First paragraph.
Yeah,
A
and why are we,
residential dwelling unit, and if we aren't gonna define it,
yes, and do we need to say dwelling unit? I mean, do we need that word unit in there? Why not just dwelling? Everybody knows what a dwelling is. It's a house.
You know,
Go ahead, Steve. Yeah, it's, yeah,
We have premises. Why don't we take the words dwelling unit out and say better means a living space of a premise? We define that, which is designed and furnished for sleeping, which has property addresses required by the International Residential Code. You don't have to add in the house premise means property, lot, plat, or parcel line, including any structure or portions of structures. On my mind, a bedroom on a premise works.
premise could work. Property, lot, plot, parcel of land, including structures or portions of structures thereon.
So then, because we do have premise already in here, I think that we probably will need to add some additional language to explain that a premise could be an individual room. Because then when you go to the parking section of it, it does say one parking space per sleeping unit.
So if we look here in Marcus, because ours matches Marcus real close, and all these definitions except the two that we don't have, rental and unit. They have unit in here, and it says unit means a separate accommodation, room, bungalow, casita, trailer, or cabin located on or within a single premise. So the premise is the property, and then the unit could have 3 units, something like that.
So the premise could have 3 units.
Yeah.
So take out dwelling.
I would definitely.
Yeah.
dwelling's a very old-timey word.
Our definition.
But we're muddying it when we have so many words and definitions in there.
Our definition of premise includes any structure or portions of structures thereon.
And that's what I'm saying, we could change or modify to clarify that a portion of a structure includes. And then we can list out what all of those are.
Marcus does have premise, and it's the exact same language. Property, a lot, plot, or parcel of land, including any structures or portions of structures thereon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they're using the exact same. The only reason I bring that up is, we had the same law firm probably helped write these up.
I just view it. Because if we're trying, what's the purpose we're trying to get to around the bedroom? If we're trying to say the bedroom is the basis for parking spaces, that's been the discussion thus far. Having dwelling, sleeping area, or living area, whatever, I'm not sure adding an additional definition helps the process, so.
You mean adding the definition just bedroom or,
We already have bedroom on here.
yeah,
Living area of the dwelling unit.
In the discussion we've had about parking had to do with bedrooms plus 500 square feet of living space.
which would be like a living room. I
Yeah, I
guess.
think we all came to consensus taking living space out was okay.
if we, so using this language, what is a 3-bedroom house that's done as an Airbnb? That's one premise and one unit?
Yes, that's the way I would interpret it.
I would interpret it. But if you had a house with a casita in the back, then that's one premise and 2 units.
Not if you're not
Right.
renting your house.
If you're not renting a house, then one.
Right, right. If you're just renting your casita, right.
We don't define unit in here.
That's what I think we need to define the actual unit, because they can charge per unit, and so we should be collecting taxes per unit.
Right, okay,
And that also comes back to the way that they do their permit fees over there in Marshall, which was set amount per premise and then additional per unit. 500 per premise, an extra 100 per unit. Every year and initially and every year after.
So
yeah, so I think that we're saying we do need the definition for unit then.
if you're, based upon what you're saying, if we're gonna charge a fee to it, I get it. But like where we wanna do that.
Do our applications have that on it?
So we do ask for the number of
units?
of sleeping spaces.
Sleeping.
Because if you have a 4-bedroom and you rent out each bedroom, because some people can do that, that would be 4 separate collections.
Which would be 4 units. On one
Or
premise.
if you have a house and then you have a casita or a mother-in-law suite and you rent out one and then you rent out the other,
Those are units.
those are 2 different.
Well, I'm confused.
So, and this is why I bring it up,
Yeah.
because the
Well, it's
definitions
confusing to
help,
us and it's confusing to
the
everybody.
definitions will help guide us as exactly how we
But-
want to move forward with the permit.
So the reason I'm confused though, is let's start about what do we wanna get money for? If we want money for permits to have a place, we gotta define what that is. Okay? If we wanna have a permit for an individual sleeping area or bedroom, then we wanna define that. If we wanna define a unit as, you don't care how many sleeping spaces in there, it's one unit,
Right,
that's something different, and so in theory, if you had a 4-bedroom unit versus a 1-bedroom unit, are we gonna charge by the number of bedrooms, or we're gonna charge by the number of units?
And that actually leads into the next.
probably units and bedrooms. Is that what you're leading to?
I say units.
Yeah, it's a workshop. Anybody can talk. We don't talk over each other, that's all.
I would stay in B&Bs all the time, so sometimes you bring a place and it say. 4 bedrooms are a possibility, but if you only use one of those bedrooms, you pay a different price. So we're set up to be able to have a person or 2 people, or say 4 bedrooms, you have a group.
Yeah, they rent out just like a bedroom, and then there's a common or communal area for people to do their
Yeah, there's
breakfast.
different charges for that, so, but.
I could be wrong too. I think I was looking at this when there was a difference between dwelling unit and living unit or something like that, and it was based off of you have kitchens and bathrooms. I think one is an explicit area where you could basically live there, and the other would be more like a hotel room. Hotel room, you can use a bathroom, but you don't have a kitchen. And when we were talking about units, from my perspective, because it will come back to parking, I think, is if you have a one premise but 5 different units, they're building that property expecting 5 different cars to come there and maybe stay, and so you need more parking per unit. But if it's a 3-bedroom house, no one's gonna be sharing. I've never shared a house with anybody, in that way, so I'm probably coming in 1 or 2 cars, depending on how many people you're bringing in. I think units are more necessary word.
But to your point, if someone has a 4-bedroom house, they could in theory rent it out to 4 different people. I think
That's what Sharon and Tom do, Alpine B&B.
That's a B&B.
Yeah.
That's not a-
Yeah,
that's not a,
STR, short-term rental.
she cooks for you. The whole different. story.
Okay, so I'm gonna jump us back on track. This is why I feel the definitions. The definitions are important, because it then starts to set us up for the direction we want to go. So I am gonna look into removing the word dwelling and then updating unit, so that at least we can get a draft kind of concept for you.
Okay, so I'm looking up the international code since y'all adopted the international code. To me, I just like to. And by ICC definition, the dwelling is a building that contains one or more, or one or two dwelling units used, intended, or designed to be used, rented, leased, let, or hired out to be occupied for living purposes. And then they also have dwelling unit and dwelling unit efficiency, dwelling unit, or sleeping unit.
Sleeping unit's the word.
Yeah.
So sleeping unit.
So one dwelling with 4 sleeping units, for example.
So then we don't want to remove the word dwelling if we want to stick with the ICC, and we can use their definition.
Yeah, if y'all want.
If we adopted them, then that kind of makes sense. We stay in line, right?
Comment. It's confusing when you have to explain something to somebody. if they're-
Right, right. Yeah, because it's gonna come down to you guys, correct?
And it will be consistent. It will be
Yes.
consistent throughout several of our ordinances. Okay, so that's just kind of the first start. Those were the two big ones because they do affect everything else.
And just to bring review, so what did we just agree on?
So for the first part, we are going to clearly define dwelling. And we're gonna clearly define sleeping unit. Per the ICC code.
Sleeping unit instead of a bedroom?
We'll remove bedroom.
So bedroom becomes a sleeping.
Correct, basically, yeah. We'll just make sure the language matches. Okay. The second part of this, like I said, we're trying to get a direction to get something started for draft purposes. So the second one is permits. And I have just kind of a yes or no question. Do you wish to have a permitting process? Yes or no?
Judy?
Well, I don't know. Didn't think about it.
Yes.
I say yes.
So Dottie says yes. Do we wish to have a permitting process?
I'm gonna hope.
I would be interested though in what Jessica and them say, just to know, because y'all are the ones that are working through the permit process.
If there is no permit process, there's a lot of work that's gonna be
So help us understand that. What-
done.
what?
So on our side, we do.
What do
If
you?
we don't have a permit.
Wait. So, both, yeah, before you jump in to talk about the second, it's actually my third one.
Oh.
If we do not have a permitting process, we will not have fees and inspections. Because that will become free.
And what are your thoughts on that?
Now
You
you-
think we should have
Now you
permits?
talk.
Yeah, both of you.
Then the city would no longer do an inspection,
Right.
so it would become a safety issue.
I mean, if I invite 100 people to my house, I'm not gonna tell you.
When you buy your house, you have to have an inspection to make sure you're not gonna burn down the neighborhood, correct?
But then you still have to have that anyway.
Too. I had to have that.
Only when you build,
Pardon?
you built your house.
I did,
So you
yes.
have to have the inspection.
You sell it though, you don't have to have an inspection.
Nobody has.
Depends on terms of your loan. Some require.
Yeah, some mortgages do
some
require.
May want to have the new buyer may want the inspection.
Right.
That's a buyer's decision, not a lender's decision.
But when you get insurance, believe me, they show up.
Okay. So what are your thoughts? Yes or no to permits? And please feel free to express your opinion.
You already hired, so I wouldn't worry about it.
We're not gonna let y'all go anywhere, so.
This was the curveball to this conversation.
Yeah.
I will say one thing while you're thinking, I think Houston's the only city that I ever researched that does not have any permitting. All the
They
other
can't
cities
keep
do.
up with it.
But Dallas and everyone else, and we're not Houston, we're not Dallas, I get it, it has nothing to do with any of
Uh-huh.
that. but every city you see does have permitting. I don't know why. Houston was the one city I saw that did not
Yeah.
have permitting.
So if we don't
They
permit
don't
it,
have
they don't go
zoning either.
inspect it, and one burns down, do we have a moral something to say?
In our ordinance, when they submit their permit, correct me if I'm wrong, that just read it earlier, they have to submit paperwork saying that we're not liable for anything that's going on with their permit.
The city's not liable.
The insurance covers, that's why we asked to see the insurance covers it all.
And so, I mean, in my opinion, I guess, if it was a good source of income, then sure, but if not, then I guess not, because it's not like we're inspecting hotels to do the same thing.
Right.
And we're not inspecting private residence homes either. I mean, unless they're doing work, obviously, and a STR is not exempt from that by any means. And so it's kind of just depends on which way you want to go about it.
So you don't inspect hotels annually? Okay, so you've never inspected a hotel other than the original building process?
Other than the original.
Yeah.
Or if they do any,
Additions or renovations.
repairs on
On
the.
Holland, y'all-
Y'all are doing inspection, we'll look at.
Yeah.
So if I'm remodeling my house, you're gonna inspect it. You're still gonna inspect it.
I would come back on that one then and say, we don't do motels, hotels. Those are commercial properties.
Yeah.
When we're looking at houses, those are homes within a neighborhood and there's a certain identity to those neighborhoods. I think the permitting process puts guardrails on that to kind of say, all right, we're not going to do it. So when we're looking at permitting processes, there's a fee aspect to that. I get all that, but when I looked it up, we got safety. So if we require insurance, fire, emergency contacts, I think is a big one. Because even right now, I think we're requiring 30 minutes, an emergency contact to be reachable within 30 minutes. So without a permit process, I'm assuming that goes bye-bye. We wouldn't need that. And then the neighborhood noise, parking, trash, those would have to
So
be
parking wouldn't fall.
codified within something else.
Stay in a B&B, not have that stuff available to you. You immediately get on Facebook and you slam them, they will not stay in business.
Yep.
It self-regulates itself.
Yep.
Because your public is the best person to regulate these places. And when you step your foot in, you're just penalizing the person for this.
I would agree with you, Lori, in that. I think that's exactly what's happening in other cities. The people are asking for ordinances and stuff to be placed and created to create those guardrails. In that, because maybe they're having parking issues or noise issues or anything else, and they say, if we got an STR problem, we need something created to kind of manage that.
And I would have to say, the majority of the inspections that I've conducted with the building commission in the last 2 years, that a lot of them did need smoke detectors, and they do need new batteries, and they do need fire extinguishers. And so for me as a neighbor, knowing that they're doing that, and I know the city is at least maintaining some sort of safety, I think it is something, because if a hotel goes up, they have a lot more of a boundary around them.
It's the same thing. If that person who- If they rent out, this is what you just can't seem to get away from. The person on that house, both same practices, in place, it is the home. Which is all find the same thing, maybe worse. Go to the same the insurance does make sure that they have to do things to keep up with that. And I check that stuff when I stay in a B&B. I check that stuff.
Okay. Getting back on track, the current vote is basically 3 for moving forward with it and 2, well, 1 no and 1 undecided.
Right.
And just to clarify, not an official vote, just a general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. There's no action being taken. It's to help me move forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Gia.
Um,
Thank
So-
you, yeah, you're very.
so the next item is if we move forward with the permitting process, do we want to look at the permitting fee structure to an annual, biannual, 3-year renewal, or one-time, no further action? So with each one of these, it could be an annual same rate every time. There's not a renewal. It's just every year you pay the same rate. You get your fire inspection, you get everything updated. Biannual would be the same rate you would have, you know, but it wouldn't happen every year. It would be every other year. And then you would have your fire inspections and stuff like that. 3-year, throwing it out there. And then I know in the discussion, it had been a one-time fee. They come, they register, and then, you know, we don't do anything following that. If we move the direction of the permitting, what is your thoughts on one of those 4 choices? Or if you have another choice, please let me know. This isn't setting the actual fee yet. This is just a direction we want to go to kind of get a consensus. The second part is what is the recommended permit fee itself?
Okay, Judy,
I still have no opinion.
I'm gonna say one time.
I think it's gonna come down to how we manage them, like, so. Gio and I sat in on when I reached out to a company, GovOS, which is the one that the county did, and they'll do these data scrapes, so they'll come in. And correct me if I'm wrong, Gio, I think everyone needs all this information so they can make the best decision. In their mind, there's no best decision, but when we scrape, we've got about 70-something permitted STRs in the city right now. And the way these scraping companies work, they'll come in and they look at Airbnb, VBRL, 30 other companies twice a week, and they'll see if the actual houses pop up here that are trying to be rented in the area. When Gio does it, he may do it, you know, once a month, once every other couple of months, maybe not on spring break, maybe not on Christmas. So he's spot checking them only on Airbnb. So he's doing due diligence to go find these properties, but it's nothing like what if you actually get another company to come in and do this. The only reason I say that is the way those things are covered, it's covered by permits. And if we had a company where we outsource some of this off to, whether it's permitting, remittance, or any of those other fees, and they're not cheap, I would recommend an annual renewal on the permit, because that's how you're covering your cost.
Okay.
Oh, and one last thing I was going to say on that too is we had them do a scrape in Brewster County, and out of Brewster County, they said there's 500 to 520, I think, in all of Brewster County. But when we look at Alpine proper, they're thinking 120 to 150. Who knows if that's good data or not? We don't really know if it's good data.
All right.
But that shows you that there could be some deltas between what we are pulling and what we could possibly pull.
Could be.
And
really
Chris
getting at-
Ruzia did come back. He's been putting together those information packets based on the information he gets out of Zartico and
Chris.
DNA, Chris Ruzia.
Yeah.
And upon first glance, I pointed out a few items of concern, and so he went back and did some additional data pulling from what he has access to, and he's kind of in line with, he thinks we may have about 120 plus.
Which is about what you just said.
120 to 150. But they may not be working permanently all the time. They may pop up and do a month or a busy month or when they're out of
Spring
town,
break.
which is why they don't pop up on our radar. But I will say too, that I've heard from realtor friends that we are saturated, and some of the homes being sold now were STRs because
Yeah.
it's. But I understand that cost is
And if
not.
somebody sells it, do they, are they required to tell us if they're no longer on there? No.
But
So if we didn't have an annual, we wouldn't have any way of knowing if they were gone or not.
But the permit doesn't transfer current. So even if they sell the property itself, that permit doesn't transfer with the property. So if I sell my house and I'm operating a short-term rental, and whether we bring in a third party or we do it ourselves, and Gio buys it from me, and now Gio's operating a short-term rental, he's non-compliant.
No, but I'm saying if he doesn't, if he buys it from you and lives in it, we don't have any way of knowing if they're dropping off.
Currently, no,
Except once a year when they
if they
they
renew.
don't renew. Yeah.
So this actually ties back
Why
to
can't
some of
this
the other issues. we
Annual
have.
renewal be very nominal. Why is it $100?
The first year is the 350. The second year is just the 100 to cover basically a fire inspection.
So
So-
let me ask you a hypothetical. You're doing these fire inspections. Every time you put yourself in a position and you do something like that, and you say you're inspecting or something, you're making yourself possibly liable. If that place burns down and someone dies in it, and you inspected it 2 weeks before, Are you saying that you aren't gonna be named in it because they got a permit from you?
Or aren't they licensed to go do this? Aren't they a license to go do
The
this?
fire department does it, right? Who does the fire inspections, guys? You do it? You
Try
you
to get
personally?
the fire department to do it. Ideally, it should be a fire. A fire
Look at the
marshal.
marshals down there.
Yeah.
Maybe they will ramp one while
A
they're
fire
checking
marshal.
everybody. But I think you're opening yourself up if you don't have control over it. If we don't have any control and people just do it and
Well,
then,
not in the state of Texas, because the state of Texas, you're liable for what happens on your property. If I go on your property and
That's
I
right.
twist my angle, you're liable.
Well, I'd say even going back, sorry, Stephen, just real quick on, anytime we do a, like if we go to a hotel motel and we do a fire alarm one, are we liable for those? I mean, I feel like we're doing due diligence to make sure it's a safe environment.
Not still on the small mom pop place that you are not going off and doing for your house. You have the same standards they are in your house. So you're wanting them to be somewhere in between. More responsible, more permits, and more inspections than the others do. It makes no sense to be whatsoever.
It's the nature of moving things along. While I don't support permits, if there's gonna be a permit, to me, it's one and done.
Okay, and Martine, you didn't get
One
the answer.
time. And that would probably be a year over year.
Okay,
I do apologize. I have to step.
Okay.
I see both sides of it.
Of course,
Of course you
I
do.
know I do too. I mean, Lori makes some very good points.
But I also see, and this is my thought of this whole thing from the very beginning. We're required by the state, when they come in and they apply, that we have to vote yes. I've never understood that, because if I don't have a choice, I shouldn't have to vote. That's
Right.
beside the point. I do see in Alpine that if you get a job and you're a teacher and your husband's a carpenter and he's got some podunk job somewhere and you want to come teach, you can't rent a house because they're all short-term rentals. They've saturated all of our, you can't for $2,800 a month, and you tell me what teacher can afford $2,800 a month for a
What
little
is it,
three-bedroom
30,000?
piece
They
of
make
crap
it
house.
nasty.
So I think any restrictions we put on, they're making money.
That's
And if they're
ridiculous.
not, they sell it. They don't turn it back into a rental property, which it started out being when they bought it to turn it into a Airbnb. And I think that's done a disservice to little towns, not necessarily big towns. But people cannot in Alpine rent something that they can afford. And I don't like the thought of it, but I don't have any. And what I see is a lot of people that are buying these are just buying, they own 15, 20 of them, don't they? Are there some that own 15,
Yes.
20? Yeah. And
Don't
I think
hear.
that's wonderful that that's the business they want to go into, but I see that it hurt Alpine. That's what I see. I see you cannot move into Alpine. My kids could not come back to Alpine, the ones that are teachers, and rent a house they could afford. They couldn't do it. So, that's just a personal opinion that I want, and I'm staying Airbnbs. Anytime we travel, we stay in them. So see, I'm on the fence
Yeah,
because
'cause
I'm
they're
gonna
less
stay in
expensive than a
them.
hotel.
I
I
think
stay in
they-
them too.
But I think they've done a disservice to little town America because you can't move into a little town now unless you can buy a house or are independently wealthy. And nobody is. Not that it's coming to Alpine. If so, they'll get in one of these Airbnbs their parents own.
Right.
I mean, I would say too, whether we permit them or not, I am for the proponent of the success of STRs, because especially if they're paying for the fee and they're bringing in people for sales tax or, fixing the properties up, property tax, I think they are a good thing as long as people can still afford to live here in town.
Right.
And we have other things like properties where they're dilapidated properties or where they're non-livable, things like that, that could be fixed up. And so I don't think STRs are the only reason that rents are high.
Okay, so
Let's
your
talk
next,
breed.
your next question.
So
You need-
Judy, you're undecided?
Yes,
Okay, so then, based off of this information, the idea is to go for a one-time fee. So then the next part of that question is what would your recommended fee be? And are we gonna consider at some point in the future to look at a third party to manage collections and STRs?
You want me
Yeah.
to start?
no, I'll start this.
Okay,
one.
okay.
If you're gonna have a one-time fee, it ought to be comparable to what they're making. For like, I don't know the timeline, I don't know whether it's a night, if it's a month, if it's whatever, but it should be comparable, because if somebody's renting one for 100 a night, and somebody's getting 4,000 a night, they ought to be paying us more. My opinion, I don't know whether you even want to control it that much.
In my opinion is I want to cover our costs. And whatever the inspection is, the employee hours that are gonna be required for this fee, this permit. Okay, so I just want us to make sure we break even.
I'd say, judging, it's all gonna come down to cost. So like by doing one-time fee, basically what we're saying is we're gonna do a snapshot. We're gonna go into the property, make sure it's safe. And then every year after that, we're not worried about it. Kind of like what, you're saying, Lori. All we're coming in is just saying, we want to verify that the property is perfectly fine, but after that, it's,
Up to you.
yeah, it's up to the
The owner.
owner. And if that's the way council, I don't agree with that. That's not the way I would move. But if that is the way, then I would say definitely don't get a third-party company because you can't afford it. There's no revenue coming in. And really, if that's the case, if all you're really trying to do is get a baseline snapshot on if it's safe or not, then cover the cost. Because you're really, isn't that the way fees work anyway with cities? Is they're not supposed to be profit centers. You're supposed to cover the cost of what you do to make sure that they're compliant.
You want to apply fees that not only cover the cost but also allow for sustainability of the resource and asset.
Which is sustainability of the asset after year one is zero, I'm assuming, because we're not doing anything.
Mr. Sandate?
Cover all costs, expenses.
Mr. Stevens?
Cover cost. And in my view, covering the cost has to include not only the inspections, also the process the city uses to verify whether someone is actually filed or not.
Good
Because if
point.
we just went through and said there's 120, we know there's like 75. My suspicion all along is there's another 40 or 50 people who have not ever applied.
And paid
Which is
hot
why-
taxes.
Which is why I'm a bill permit guy. So, but, because I want sales tax and revenue going in, but that's the argument that if you're gonna charge what it costs. And I would not go to a third party.
And really saying that, then we will, when we're talking compliance, we're never gonna have compliance now because there's no money to cover any kind of form of compliance. Like we've got Geo, we're gonna cover Geo's cost that, 3 times a year go online on Airbnb and look for them.
The recommended permit would probably increase slightly because of the having to do that ability to verify and all that. This leads into the next part of it, the part that we kind of don't offset very well. So hotel tax payments and reporting. So once we get them permitted, they still are required to let us know whether they collect or they do not collect. The way the ordinance reads, it does not include specific information. It says upon the request of the administrator or the finance department of the city, the owner of premises used as a short-term rental shall remit within 30 days an accounting of all occupants who rented the premises and hotel occupancy tax paid thereof. It shall be unlawful for a person to fail to provide the said information requested in a timely manner. There are consequences and penalties that we are allowed when people do not file. We get a lot of people who don't file because they're not operating. We don't have something in place currently that says if you stop operating or if you have a zero operation to notify the city. So this is an added expense that we've never considered or looked at when you're looking at the permitting process, is you have a whole nother set of individuals who have to maintain when all of these payments get made. And do we send out a notice to them saying, did you miss a payment? You owe us a payment. Could you please file a report? Your report doesn't match the check you provided. Some people like to overpay, some people like to underpay. So I'd like that when we look at part of the process, covering the costs, that we also include additional information that sets specific deadlines. The state of Texas requires that payments get made by the 20th of the month or preceding the collections. They also outline that it dependent on how much you bring in determines whether you pay monthly or quarterly. Short-term rentals typically pay quarterly because they don't meet that initial threshold. We can put that within our own ordinance. That we also require the use of reporting for non-rental. And if they don't report for non-rental or they don't provide the finance or the taxes part in a timely manner, that we outline the availability of penalty and interest. These are all allowable at the state level, which we can allow them. I know prior history with the county, I did just that. We sent out notice that if they didn't receive it, we let them know. But this also makes sure that there's a compliance issue to it. So I know that we're worried about the permitting, the inspections and all that, but there's also a compliance section that is outlined by the state of Texas that allows us to collect the taxes to be given. So I'd also like for us to look at that and in improving that section of the ordinance. Just so you know, it's section 90-131.
How do we know, if we don't permit, how do we know who is an STR and who's not an STR?
There's multiple ways to do that. We can request the information from the state of Texas and do a deep dive into the data that's provided, because it is a data dump. They just give us everything. And then determine what's in Alpine and go that route. You can hire a third party, or we can continue where we just sit here and we call and verify Airbnb, VRBO, or we go the direction of the permitting process.
Now, the data dump from the state, how much does that cost us?
It is free.
Oh,
It is an
that's
information
surprising.
request to the state.
Seems like everything I want.
They made it
to
harder
charge.
though. It used to be easy. I used to be just able to go in and put Alpine third quarter and it would give me everything. Now you actually have to submit an information request and they data dump the whole thing.
Do we have that data?
From time to time, yes.
Last
I
time
don't
you-
request it on a regular basis.
Last time you looked at it, what was our numbers? 70? 120?
No, it was 80 something.
So they're probably under theoretically compared to the third party.
But it's also dependent on when you request. So if I request for April and the STR didn't operate in April, there's not gonna be that. The state doesn't keep up with the zero side either. I mean, they want the money side. Or if they operated one day and they're not gonna pay until the next quarter, it throws it off. So that would be something we would have to pull on a regular basis to start to see like you mentioned, maybe I open my house up for spring break. And then no other time in the year. So what are your insights, your thoughts? They all tie back together with the whole permitting process, the collection of tax.
Recap
setting-
our options again.
So
That was a
for-
lot. I'm a very visual learner and you just did it orally, so it's like,
So when you're going back and you're looking at what is very important from a financial standpoint is the collection of the hotel tax payments. We don't specifically set deadlines. We don't specifically set that they need to report whether they're in operation or not in operation. It would also be nice if they would just let us know if they've stopped altogether. A
so you're
formal-
asking us if we should give them deadlines.
The state
Yeah.
of Texas sets it for the 20th, the following month of collections, dependent on the threshold in which they collect. So if they collect $100, they don't have to report $100 the next month. They
Uh-huh.
would report it within their quarter.
Okay, so
um,
you're asking about the deadlines,
If we want to set the thresholds so that they know when they have to report, if it's monthly or quarterly. If we want to set they have to report whether they operate or they don't operate.
okay, so that's number 3, okay.
And if we want to set penalty and interest. As outlined by the state.
Okay, so there's 4 things you want an answer to. First of all, do we want to set deadlines? Second of all, do we want to have the thresholds for reporting as per the state? Third is, we want them to report to us whether they're operating or not operating? And fourth is, do we want to impose penalties?
It's penalty.
So without an annual permit, is this not costing us 5 years in? For you to go back and check this?
Yes, it does still cost us.
But you're getting it for the taxes, your hotel taxes take care of that. How do they report?
Currently, most of them report quarterly.
To the state?
If I have a place and I'm going,
No.
'cause people report, when it's easy to report.
Right, so we're
Do they
spending
do it
money, so Jim's
digitally?
doing
Do they
some
do it
5 years
online?
in.
Do they
We're
come
not
into
getting
the
an annual
office? How do they report?
So
Is it
the
hot?
report is available online
don't
that
get
they can
that.
print
We don't
out,
get
they can
that.
fill out, and they can
Goes
submit
to
it by mail, they
advertising.
can drop it off
Right.
here. We don't have an online.
The
payment
idea is
system.
the annual permit. I don't know.
Okay,
I'm
so
sorry,
you just
I
had a
was-
good point. Go
Oh,
ahead.
I didn't, it was stupid.
No, it was not. Okay, so the point that she wanted to bring up is that 5 years in, yes, we're
No
bringing in
annual
hot
fees.
money.
No, we're not charging them an annual fee.
We're bringing in hot money, but that goes 51% to advertising for events. That doesn't go to cover the cost for employees having to monitor this. So that's her point.
This goes back to your cover costs for your permit fees.
Right. And so if we're doing this
20 years in.
and
you
we, and our
charged them 20
finance
years ago
department is having to
$300.
send out these notices,
Cause that's free.
then what Darren
Geo's
said
time to
about
do it, or
the
whoever does
annual
it.
renewal fee would cover our costs.
I would mention too, if we don't have a permit, then we can't we won't regulate any emergency contacts. So really, once they're up, they're not even required to have an emergency contact or anything. So if there's a party house or something else, it would be a noise issue and you'd call the cops or something like that. But we'd have no emergency contact listed. And also we wouldn't have any occupancy rules. So they could, in theory, if we wanted to put occupancy rules in there, they could pack as many people in that
100
house.
people in that tiny house.
And then they could have 100 cars there.
Again, your people do not, I'm telling you, it self-regulates. Has anyone ever not stayed in a B&B? I mean, it self-regulates. The more you try to put switching on it, the less pressure you have. No, what?
But the majority of our hot tax comes from five businesses.
Is it possible? 'Cause you had brought up that some people. Spring break. If we issue, like how we do single events for like. Where they're not renting their house, like especially.
Need to slip.
And have a.
Yeah, all pass.
So they're not paying. for- Instead of having them, I mean, I don't know, you guys might do a one-time set, fee for a short rental for indefinitely, it's possible. Or it could be annual, but I was just thinking if you guys went with an annual one, they could do an annual permit or just a single event where they're like doing it just for certain times of the year. Where they pay a separate fee.
If we did, if there's really 100 short-term rentals here in the city, if that's legitimate data, and they're gonna charge us around 30,000, that's $300 a pop. Am I crazy? So. that
Do you
would
want to answer to that?
We'll ask Judy, we'll get her. But that would be, and in order to cover the cost of this third party company to do the compliance and all that other kind of stuff, we would be going a $300 a year if we really have about 100. They would be coming in and doing those scrapes and actually verifying that, twice a week, that these people are in business and doing things, but.
I know at one point the county was gonna do this. Can we not piggyback off the county? And
We never got that opportunity. They
are they
signed-
doing it?
last I heard, they pulled the contract.
I thought too, because it was too much.
They weren't getting what I think they thought they would get.
Right.
I've not gotten a clear answer to be able to provide the feedback.
I would say too, from the counties, I had that CAD meeting earlier and we were talking about short-term rental stuff.
Mhm.
Where the county is a much different beast than the city because the county doesn't make laws, I think Macon was saying. The county, I think, is a harder Bronco to get on and ride because it's just more of, there's less rules and everything else. I don't even know if they could issue a permit to kind of cover the cost of that regulation. They have to do it out of their general budget or something.
The only permit I know that the county for sure has is a mass gathering.
Gathering, yeah.
So let me, me repeat what I think I'm hearing. If I was a person that had a B&B, I would hear you want to impose an annual fee to monitor me, to make sure that I'm paying taxes to you.
I would say it's a fee to make sure, you know, that you're following the noise, the parking, the trash, the safety regulations, the oxygen rule.
So
You
tough.
feel active to want to participate with something. So it's something
Money.
So then I'm gonna just take a minute, because I know Mr. Steven has kind of been anxiously waiting. Would you like to provide some feedback, please?
Go Rick.
I'm just trying to, so if we want hot funding, that's what the city wants. We want the revenue. Okay? And I would think we'd be trying to figure out how we make sure we have a mechanism to get revenue. We already know, based upon data, that there are probably 50 who we're not getting revenue from. Okay? And so how do you incentivize them to come participate? But I would also say, it's not clear we have a mechanism to get revenue. Because I thought I understood, Megan, there are even hotels who are not paying hot funds.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
There
we
are.
don't even have a mechanism for them, and they're a whole lot bigger than the short-term rentals are. If we can't solve that problem, I think we're whistling Dixie here. We're just kind of holding one down with everything else in Alpine.
So the consequences for not paying hotel taxes within the state is that we can configure an estimate of what they owe us
Okay,
and put a lien on the hotel's property.
okay, so if we have the same discussion then about the house, why can't we put a lien on the house if they choose not to? That's the penalty. So, hey, people, we just want you to pay. You're gonna submit your form, boom, boom, boom. You're good. Don't submit your form. We have to take some action to be able to work. That's in my mind, the quid pro quo. That's not why I'm interested in big permits. If we have a method to find out what's going on in this digital world, we ought to be able to figure that out. Who's operating an STR? You know, we can send them an email. You know, hey, STR, we send them a deal once a month, please fill the form out, and send it back. You're gonna get 70–80% at most, you're still gonna have those that don't do it. It's how we're gonna maintain the compliance for everyone. And that to me is where I think we tend to fall short.
And
We
how many
have the
liens
noise
should we
ordinance
put on
passed.
hotels?
We haven't.
We have,
Because
We don't clearly outline the consequences within our taxation
Yeah.
ordinance to be able to do that. Although we could say that the state allows us to. It's been discussions in the past with different administrators and city attorneys. We've just never moved forward.
so to me, whatever we do
Be
for
right now.
hotels, I'll do for STRs. It's the same process. They're trying to run a business, they're self-regulating, we're trying to get the hot funds out of it so we can bring more people. That's kind of where my fundamental view is.
But on a zoning perspective, you're running a business inside of a residential zone, so don't you think it'd be more considered like a special use conditional use permit in the sense that we're regulating the company?
That's why we want them to come at least notify us. I thought that's why the city approved it. It's a special use permit to operate an STR in wherever it's at. That's why I thought we approved it at city council.
But that's essentially what the, I mean, from a zoning perspective, because you're running a business inside residential.
Yeah.
And so at some point, that's something it's not considered a residential house anymore. It's their business.
Yeah, but I go back to, that's our mechanism for someone says, hey, I'm running an STR. Get council approval. Great, thanks very much. We now have them on the list. And we have a mechanism to go collect hot funds.
Do we, Jessica, do we inspect when someone wants to do a special use permit or a conditional use permit? Do we inspect the premises the same way we do for next year?
Yeah. it'd be,
The fire inspection,
Thank
do we go into the nitty gritty with electrical?
Are you going to have emergency exit, signs and, depending on the type of usage it is. So, but yeah.
So would you formulate the special use permits to have the same type of application across the board, or does each one need to be specific to the type of business?
It's just the inspection's the same across the board.
Megan, question on this. Let's just bring it back to cutting hair in residential areas, right? So we've done a special use permit, so you can go cut hair in a residential area. do we do it where they get that permit and now the state of Texas and us never go back in and verify that we say, you've created a bar in a residential zone, you're good from now until the end of time? Is that the way? Because I think, don't they go through regulations and stuff from the state that they're required to actually have?
I don't know the state regulations. I know they have to register with the TDLR, which is the Texas Department of Licensing and
I
Regulation.
thought we understood through those huge meetings we had that they have to register with
They have
the
to register,
barbershop people.
but I don't know if the state ever comes back out. I don't know if there's an annual inspection.
I don't know if it's this far out, but,
Well,
I
they
think
inspect
that
farmers
short-term rental
markets.
should At least have a question.
But are you agreeing kind of like with the one that gets the permit, because it's gonna rotate, so it's gonna rotate. People try to figure it may not work, and then they move on.
No, I do think that at least some type of permit needs to be done, and I think it's gonna be. Even like with the one chair salon, she had to comply as she was commercial, even though it's a residential house. She has to have a commercial emergency exit, she has to have a fire extinguisher available. She has to have all those things as if she was a commercial business inside of residential. So the same would apply for a short-term rental. When we go in, they have to have an emergency, it's state plan just like a hotel would. So, they have to have fire, extinguishers available and visible. If not, they have to be labeled, and, smoke detectors have to be working in working order.
Sound.
So, I think it's the same thing, at least have needs, especially. For every spot.
Okay, so I know there's a lot of information and directions to take. I'm gonna go over the last couple, we have about 3 minutes. I don't foresee this, solving everything today, but
No.
we have much better direction as of right now. So the next item I have on there are the consequences. The one thing we talk about, and this is on the agenda for this evening's council meeting about, compliance. We don't outline specific consequences. Within our ordinance, it says, if you don't, these are the steps that will be taken. If you don't, these are, the penalties. This is what will happen. We outline it, as basically non-compliant, unpermitted. It shall be unlawful for any person to rent, lease. All hosting platforms should provide information. It is, I believe, 2,000 a day too.
It's 2,000, not to exceed 2,000.
A day, but there's no clear process in place that outlines, if I don't get approved by council, what are my steps? If I do get approved by council, what are my steps? If I am compliant and someone drives by, and all of a sudden my parking has disappeared, whatever, there's no consequences to what we're currently doing that are clearly outlined step by step. And I had provided some documentation at the last discussion with this that showed different cities have different consequences and step by step. How does it get fixed? What is the reporting period? How do they come compliant? One of the consequences on the taxation side, as I mentioned earlier, is the penalty and interest, and we can go after that. We just want to clearly define it. The next one, which is the biggest discussion amongst all of you, has been the parking. The parking is what has started this whole conversation, which is a good thing because we want our ordinances to be up to date and compliant across the board. I would just like a simple understanding of what each one of you perceive as a parking. Is it a concern? If it is, how would you like to see it resolved so that I can make some notes? Judy?
I don't want to parking on grass. The concrete companies, I could get bricks that people can park on and throw them out there. I think that's trashy and that's not fair to your neighbors. To have them pulling up in the yard and tell them that's a parking place.
Catherine?
I concur with Judy. I don't
You
want
can't do
them
that.
parking on grass. And I'm thinking about the number of spaces. I mean, as long as there's on-street parking and, because we were talking about, should we have one space per bedroom, correct? Or should we have one space per bedroom plus an additional space for living room? That's a tough one. I think one space. If you have a 4-bedroom house, you need to have 2 spaces. I don't see a lot of people going to short-term rentals without, or with bringing 4 cars. If it was gonna be me, it would be me, my husband and my children, and we would each occupy a bedroom.
Darren?
Match the cities for residential zone.
Easier way to say it. What is our residential zone? It's 1 per house. That is easier. I like it.
We finally got her.
If
There
it's
you
One
go.
off-street parking unit,
Yeah,
1 per unit for the.
and no grass. Yes, okay.
No
What-
grass.
I
on the
concur
grass.
with Darren and
Is
you.
that a thing is that?
It's not
We
in our
can
reg,
define it.
the vegetation's not in our regular code, but we can add that. specifically.
Vegetation.
And actually, I think that's another issue that before we even get into the grass one, I just really want to match whatever's residential, because I don't understand the south side on some of those where there's no curbing.
That's
and they're
true.
working into that. That's what worries me.
So Mbappe?
Like in Southside, there's a bunch of them that park on the city right away. They ain't got no carports or no.
Which sometimes has grass.
True.
Only
Okay.
after a big rain.
See, these questions are not easy to answer, Megan, and it's 5:01, so let's wrap it up.
Mr. Stevens?
So,
They're not easy to answer.
I know.
I am for not parking on the grass, that's one.
Okay, yeah.
We're all in agreement on that.
Okay, number 2. Our ordinance currently says parking will differ based upon zoning districts. There are short-term rentals down the street from me that are 3 or 4 bedrooms, and it is not unusual to have 4 cars plus 4 trailers. Not unusual at all, okay? That's the issue Ward 5 runs into, okay? Some of these big homes, there's one that's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms. They have tall spaces. Fire action is great, they've done a good job. What we don't have is a mechanism to help the neighbors work this when you have a unit that is, people keep telling me, Rick, it's a hotel, why not be charged hotel? Okay, let's set that aside, but there's not a mechanism for working that. We've not come up with a solution yet. I think it is unique. Because I get what goes on in Ward 4, the south side, you need the flexibility there. But I certainly understand we want to be responsive to units that were built whenever and they didn't have parking. And I don't know the best way to approach it. But I do think there are some places that need more parking on the site, and there are some that need flexibility. And that's, so that didn't help the discussion at all.
No.
Actually,
But it's
so
true. You're right.
It does help the discussion because within my notes, I have, of course, across the board, not parking on vegetation. You guys are pretty consistent with, reflecting on our city ordinance, our zoning ordinance. But I also have a good note here with, we need to have exceptions for properties with possible additional units.
Yeah.
And we can outline that. So if I have a property, because I know some of the ones he's talking about. If I have a
We all
nice
know the
large,
ones he's talking about.
if I have a nice large property and I can rent out 5 different units,
Yeah.
each unit can have 2 vehicles,
That's
that
what's
is 10 vehicles.
cars.
Well, then you have the owners that live there too, and they could
That
have
is
3
an
to 4
exception
vehicles.
that we can outline within the ordinance that allows for either some type of additional
Exceptions or
permitting,
something.
maybe an additional fee, maybe an additional redirection, something, but we can put that in there because we can add those
But you're only
exceptions.
charging them one-time fee, remember? You're not
No.
charging annual.
To cover all costs. The last item, because I
But we
know
may
you will
charge
receive
it.
an email this week, if not later on today. One of the things that you guys talked about was wanting to get the STR feedback. We don't have the good attendance from STR owners, but we have a good database of their emails. I would like each one of you to provide a survey question on something that you're inquiring about that you would like their feedback on. And we will send out a survey to all of the STR operators that we have contact information for, so that we can at least encourage them to provide the feedback as we try to put this ordinance together.
You're gonna send us an email to remind us of this.
Yes.
Okay.
You know, something like Survey Monkey, so it's
Survey Monkey or Google Survey, we've used Google Survey multiple times.
Yeah,
But please make sure that your questions are pretty easy to answer.
Yep.
And if it's kind of a yes or no, A, B, or C, provide some of that feedback as well.
yeah, no short answers.
So that is kind of the direction I wanted to go. You can see
Okay,
every step of this ties together at some
Clear as mud.
ready? All right, and with that, we're gonna adjourn. City Council will